Waycam ready? All right, we've got the thumbs up from Waycam. Hi everybody, good evening. Good evening. Oh, look at that. I can feel the love already. Let's give it up for Waycam, by the way. Thank you to Waycam for being here. We really appreciate it for that amazing service to our community. We really appreciate you. Thank you all for being here. My name is Michael Henrik, and we're here because of this plot of land. We all passed it on the way in. I've lived in town for 10 years, and this is more or less what it's looked like. Sometimes there's snow, sometimes not. This site here, 195 Main Street, for the past 10 years. And the reason that a group of your neighbors has invited you out for a discussion tonight, a community conversation, is because we've got an idea. We've got an idea we want to share with you. We want to hear your feedback. We want to find out what we can do to improve this idea and turn it into something that can benefit all of us. That's our goal for the evening. And as I forgot I had the clicker. I was waiting for the slide to turn. Here we go. So our idea right now is the Wayland Community Sports Center, a home for Wayland sports and recreation. So a little bit later, we're going to hear questions from you, and we're going to do our best to answer them. But first, we want to make sure that we set the table. We want to introduce ourselves, who's the WCSC team. We're going to talk about our mission, the history of the site, our vision for the site, the plan about how all of this might work, and then answer the question, why 195 Main Street for the Wayland Community Sports Center? Sound like a good plan, everybody? Yeah. All right, there we go. I like the energy. I'm going to need the energy here. So here we go. So let's talk about the team. The bottom line here is that the WCSC team is a team of some third, fourth generation Waylanders, some who've been here 10 years. We're all volunteers. We are your neighbors. We're a group of people who have different professional expertise that we've come together and volunteered our time to explore taking that empty plot of land and turning it into something really neat. Something really neat for everybody in Wayland. Multi-generational indoor sports and recreation center. So let's take a look at some of these names here. This is the list of volunteers. It's been more than a year that we've been talking and exploring what could be done out of that piece of land that can benefit this town and benefit the most people in this town. And right here at the table, three of the folks on that list, we have Scott Walters, Donnie Guarinoni, and John Todd, who you'll hear from in just a little bit. So this is the stage that we're setting here. And one thing that I would ask everyone to keep in mind when we get to the questions and when you're hearing from this group is that we're all here from WCSC to work together. We want to hear your ideas. We are your neighbors. We're coming from a good place here. So let's see what we can all build together to better our town. So next up, let's hear from Donnie.
Thank you, appreciate it. So there is our WCSE mission, and that's the official mission, but essentially, we're a nonprofit group that want to provide something special to the community that not just one group or two groups, but as many groups as possible. And we want to do that by serving our diverse recreational needs. We all know what the needs are: indoor facility during the winter, more field space, and we always have a shortage of courts and fields throughout all of our sports. But we want to leverage private donations to build and operate a dynamic, multi-generational indoor sports and community facility at the vacant site of the former Wayland DPW, 195 Main Street.
Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of the site here?
Well, the history of the site. Through this process, I've learned it used to be our town dump prior to 1933 when it was turned into DPW. And for 80 years, it was the DPW site for Wayland. If you go to a little bit of history on this site, back right before I moved to town, 2011 to 2014, it sounds like there were a lot of legal issues, suits from the unions running the folks, our DPW, wanting to move out of that building. It was a hazardous facility. Ultimately, the new DPW site was built. I don't know the address. I do drive by it. It looks like a gorgeous facility. It's about $15 million. It opened up in 2015. This site, I think we all know, 2018, it was proposed to be a library there. It got to about 62% of the vote and needed 66% to pass. It did not pass. By my account, that's the last time anybody tried to do anything with the site in 2018. There really hasn't been any activity there since 2018. You'll see on the next slide, Michael, there's a detailed map. Ben Gould, the LSP, came and presented to the select board probably back in October, November timeframe. There's a detailed map laying out where specific areas need to be. There's environmental cleanup needs to happen. There's an article number 34, environmental cleanup on this year's town meeting article. That should pass. It's sort of, I think, legally we have to do something in that site. So this will happen ultimately, and we'll talk about some environmental issues. Our idea is to be good neighbors here, to focus, do anything we can do to ensure that that site is cleaned up, because right now, not only is it if I lived in the Dudley Pond area, I'd be a little irritated because it doesn't really feel like anything's happened there to be cleaned up. So that's a little bit of the history, and we look to change that.
So that's the history, and let's talk about the vision for the future here. Donnie, back to you.
Yeah, you can go on to the next slide. So the vision is simple. We want something that was centrally located. It needs to be multi-generational. So whether it be our youth sports, and here in Wayland, we have a good amount of not just our town youth sports, but we have club sports based here in Wayland as well. But think about people that are working from home that want access year-round to some type of athletic recreational space and facilities. Or even our seniors, right? We'll get into the design of this in a second, but stuff that we can provide during the day. Like right now, you can't get a gym, you can't get an indoor space, whether it be a track or anything during school hours. Everything is shut down. So we think this can serve so many people that have different recreational interests and want to pursue as many activities as possible. This right here is, if we had to say what is our ideal indoor space, this is completely conceptual. Like this is what we think based on our research going to different facilities would best suit Wayland and present as many benefits as possible. The idea here is we have about a 40,000 square foot space. Right now you see it in one of two modes. This is the court mode, so whether it can do volleyball, basketball, pickleball. You see that blue space right there, that's a 3,500 square foot space on the second floor that can be used for all kinds of different gatherings, whether it be before or after school programs, study halls, or different groups here in Wayland can utilize that space. That's the community aspect. There'll be a little area that has grab and go snacks and things like that. If you go to the next slide, you can see how this can now transform. So we went from having 6 courts to now having a 21,000 square foot turf space. This is typically the mode you'll see in these kind of facilities during the winter because the largest demand is for indoor turf space for all your field sports for obvious reasons, the winter and the weather. Usually this is the mode or formation between the months of November and then through early April until fields open back up. This right here, like it can also have with flexibility to also flip. You don't have to go all turf. You can mix it up, right? So during the summers, if you want to keep two of those portions into turf, you can, right? So it's got a lot of flexibility. If you go to the next section, you can see the walking track that we want to put above. That's going to be open throughout the day for all Wayland residents to use in our community, which I think is a much needed thing. All right, the plan.
Thanks. All right, the plan. Right now, this is a concept, right? This is a very early stage idea that we presented here. So we are a resolution. This is a non-binding resolution. And what I've learned through this process is that resolutions, they go to the back of the bus. They are behind every amendment. So this will be either late Monday night or early Tuesday, depending on the select board's trying very hard to do this in one day. Who knows? I've never seen it happen before, but if it does, it will be late Monday night. The idea here is to build momentum, right? The select board was very accepting of this. They listened to us. They held 2 town forums. but they haven't been convinced, and they need to hear from the town. And this is really one of the biggest ideas here, is to get enough people out to say, like, look, we're sick and tired of looking at this empty parking lot that does nothing for anybody, and we'd like to do something about it. So the idea is we want to pass this resolution in part to show that the town is behind this, to motivate the select board to issue an RFP. And the idea would that once the select board issues an RFP, they'd engage in a competitive public procurement process. And this would open it up to a number of different private entities. Our specific vision here, we'll talk about it in a second, is to do it as a nonprofit. So the idea is to get enough momentum here, not only to show the select board, but potential investors and other partners that we want to work with, that Wayland is not a town of no, because we all know this, it's a running joke. How long does it take to get something done in Wayland? You know, chatting with somebody earlier today, 40 to 50 years to get something done like this. So it's ridiculous. I've been here for 14 years and we've watched how difficult it is to get things passed in this town. So we'd like to do something here. The idea was we were doing something that appeals to not only parents with young kids, but parents. We have no places to play, use indoor sports, but then also seniors. And we'll talk a little bit about programming during the day, pickleball during the day, the track around the top for the seniors. We know that we're going to have to come back to town meeting in 2026 and likely have 2 articles that we have to pass in 2026. Not only issuing the RFP, but there's selecting the RFP, but then there's going to be a zoning article likely as well. One thing we'll talk about in a second, working with the folks, the EDC folks, there's going to be childcare at town meetings. So we want to make this easy as possible for folks to show up to town meetings, stay late, or show up early on Tuesday to pass this. The second piece, you went a little bit ahead, nonprofit and land lease approach. It's worth delving in just briefly, a little of the history of this, and a lot of this stuff, folks, everything you're seeing up here, including this presentation, will be on our website, waylandcsc.org. But it's worth mentioning, when we started this process, when I first met Donnie 2 years ago, and this was an idea way back when, while we were still trying to put turf fields at the local recreation and preserve, originally there was a group of folks who wanted to put a facility there, didn't happen. But when we started pursuing this process, we went down the path of looking at Wellesley. If folks have been into Wellesley, Route 9, the sports, Boston Sports Institute, run by a group called Edge Sports Group. Very successful. We met with Edge Sports Group. They visited a Wayland Dad's event 8 years ago. This company has grown tremendously. They operate 9 facilities around here, and I think like 17 around the country. They loved the idea. They loved coming in, running it as a for-profit entity, and we thought that was a great idea. As we went along, we talked to some folks. We realized, one, having a for-profit come here using the town land, that's going to be a tough sell. 2, the youth sports and the folks that negotiated the land lease deal weren't necessarily getting all the warm and fuzzies, and they didn't have as much control of that facility in Wellesley. So at the same time, we ran into the Winchester Soccer Club. And if anybody's been over to Winchester and seen the 11v11 field that the Winchester Soccer Club, a nonprofit, built, completed building it probably 3 years ago. The thing is oversold. It's gorgeous. A ton of use by the Winchester youth programs, Winchester Soccer Clubs. It's a different facility, right? It's an 11v11 soccer field, which is very different than what we're trying to do. But at the same time, the business model, this nonprofit business model, was very appealing. So we spent time with them, and we learned a lot of things about the nonprofit that give us a ton more control, give us all kinds of cost savings in building this kind of facility. We gain a certain amount of freedom. That freedom will allow us to support youth sports, seniors programming, just a whole bunch more support that we have if we do this as a nonprofit. What else? What am I missing here? John, you're going to talk privately raising funds, 99-year lease for $1. There's some things that we're taking the best of what Wellesley did, combining it with what Winchester has done, and coming up with a unique model that we think is best here for the entire Wayland community. I think that's my section there. I ad-libbed a little.
Hey guys, I was actually reflecting. I don't think I've been on this stage. I grew up here. I don't think I've been on the stage since 6th grade Mikado. I was in a tie-dye kimono and it was fantastic. But anyway, it didn't look like this. The DPW site, however, has. My goal has been to work with the team to build a financial model, because the primary thing we need to have is a sustainably operating business, something that will outlast us. With the goal to also, in this type of business, to mitigate risk. A lot of things change over the course of these projects. It's not like we're going to be swinging hammers in a few months. This is a multi-year process, and a lot of things change. And so we brought a lot of expertise to the table, some in this room. We've talked to engineers and architects, site designers, and people that have built and operated these type of facilities. And we sort of stuck all that insight into a model, and we basically create a tool so that over time, wherever interest rates go, wherever steel tariffs go, whatever happens, that we've sort of built a plan and a process such that this thing moves forward. And we're not subject to small changes. We're obviously going to be subject to big changes, but that's any project that happens. And so those are our goals. So on the operating side, we have a sense of how to build this and what we can do. We have a sense of how much it'll cost. And on the capitalization side, there's obviously a lot of money to source and find. In a nonprofit model, there's a lot of options open to us. We have donors and sponsors and grants and state agencies that we can tap. There's institutional lending relationships that have done this before in this area for facilities we all know. So there's a proven set of resources to bring to this that operate in this area, and it's not something we're trying to stretch to accomplish. We will be partnering with people that know how to do this. This is not something we will go alone. We have a lot of expertise, but we also know what we don't know. And so that is our focus. In addition to all this, we've talked, and I'm sure as part of these discussions, you've understood that there are bigger issues here that are difficult to pencil right now. Certainly the environmental is something that the select board and the town manager have taken the lead on, and that is independent of what gets built here, and that's a great thing. It's moving forward, and certainly I would encourage looking at Article 34 and trying to understand it better if you have questions. But that is something that has been worked on for many years and is sort of a gating item to making sure that whatever goes here is appropriate for the existing conditions. So with that, there's also traffic. There's also drainage. There's parking. There's a lot of issues that in the normal course of a project like this normally gets done in the town process. We go through town boards. We hire our consultants. We all reflect on what's there. We make sure everyone understands the potential impacts of what gets done, and then we move forward if it makes sense. In this particular case, the town has sort of begun that process. A draft traffic document is available, and basically has shown that even existing conditions aren't really great. I think everyone that comes and goes in the middle school realizes that at least in those 20 to 25 minutes around 8:40 and sometimes 3:15, that it's not easy. There's backup, there's issues. Back when I was here, the high school and the pool it was a free-for-all, and now you have turning lanes and a signal and all that kind of stuff. You can see that elsewhere. West Plain was also very similar, right? These are things that get evaluated over time and are improved with the town's knowledge and approvals. So I would expect this to be part of that concept anyway. I think the traffic study, I'm not a traffic guy, but I wandered through it, and a left turn signal southbound and a right turn signal, not signal, but a lane would improve what you have pretty markedly. And that was certainly a comment. So when you start building something here and factoring in that additional traffic, the question is what's too much? You know, what tools can you bring to mitigate, and is that too much? And the final comment in the conclusions was basically that this group believes there's significant potential for building something here, and that the DPW site is something that you can mitigate around, bringing in some of those things. And we would basically, like Scott said, be partners in that process. I'm a my kids are fourth generation Wayland. I have no intent to build something here that doesn't work for people. That doesn't make any sense. Most of my kids won't even benefit from this. And I think that's true of a lot of folks in our team. So we want to make sure from a traffic perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a parking perspective, from the way this works with the middle school, that it works. And ideally, it's better than it was before. So aside from the asset itself, that is certainly the goal of all these overarching issues, which will not be understood at town meeting and will take time and will take money. And so what we're asking really for is the go-ahead and the show of support so that our group can begin to raise capital and devote those resources and to get those answers, like any developer would on a site like this in Wayland. With that, have I lost any other issues? Okay.
I want you to do my section.
Yeah. Serious.
Well, before we go on, just to summarize here where we stand, we're looking at an April 7th, April 8th town meeting where a non-binding resolution on this property site is being proposed by the select board. And that non-binding resolution is asking the town whether the town wants to explore a recreational use at the site. If that passes, the town would then consider opening up a public procurement, competitive procurement process, which we as a group would like to participate in. So town meeting in a couple of weeks is just a temperature check on, hey, are we interested in doing something here? Because in order to take all the steps that John just described and the investment that it takes to really dive into fruitful answers to those very real questions that we want to explore together and solve together and navigate, we do need to know that the town and our neighbors are at least open to the idea of something getting done. And so just to, again, reiterate what the next step is, that's what we're looking at on April 7th, or more likely, because we all are familiar with town meeting, April 8th. And now, Scott, if you want to dive into some of the big questions that we've gotten already over the last several months about why here? Why does this site belong here at 195 Main Street?
Great, thank you, Michael. 3 big reasons, 3 buckets we sort of classified it in. This location versus other locations in town, the size of this location versus one of the things people have talked about is putting a field here versus putting this indoor facility here, and then the usage of this facility versus a field. So those are the 3 buckets that I'll go into each one of these. I think you go back one. There you go.
Sticky clicker, forget.
Yeah, no, you're good. Other sites, locations, we've looked at different places. We've gone to the local conservation area. We talked to the folks there. I was very involved way back 2016-17 when we were talking about putting first a turf field, then a grass field there. Same thing with the greenways. There's a lot of work to be done to prepare one of these sites. The site also near Alta Oxbow Field. There would be a huge environmental impact on any of these sites. You're going to start taking down a whole bunch of trees. You're going to have to put infrastructure in to access those locations. The idea here is, one, this facility, the location is better. There's not going to be as much impact on the environment. Frankly, the site needs to be cleaned up. It respects the architectural and historical remains of different sites, protects the Sudbury River, maintains conservation areas. I think the idea, talking to gentleman Jeff before about the town center as a location, we talked to them a while ago about it. It just doesn't, the parcel of land there would probably support 2 basketball courts. The idea here is this facility would have at minimum 5, more likely 6 basketball courts. Suddenly you can attract more club teams, you can attract tournaments, people who pay the premium prices that ultimately pay for this facility. So the idea here is to do this as a nonprofit, as we've said before, because that's gonna be in the best interest of the town. If you suddenly have to start paying for a whole bunch of infrastructure, or you can't build the same size facility that we're looking at, it changes the business model. So that's one reason there, this site versus other sites. If you go to the soccer field idea, one, if you look at the space, it could probably fit a 77, it certainly could fit a 77 field. You know, that's only good, what we say here, it's for 3rd and 4th graders. It doesn't really necessarily move the needle on fields. My own personal background, I used to be on the soccer board, I used to coach soccer back when we were pushing really hard to have the local recreation preserve as a soccer field. My group, Wayland Dads, was 100% behind that. I know we need more fields. I believe there are better sites for us to put more fields. The visioning committee, it says the old South landfill. The idea of putting an 11v11 field there with lights, and it's going to be a lot easier to put that there. You can't fit an 11v11 here, and you likely can't fit a 9v9 if you have to put the emergency vehicle access around it. Finally, I think the final point here was the usage of a grass field versus an indoor facility. If you think about an indoor facility and what we could do there, one, it's going to be year-round usage. It's going to be during the day, you're going to be able to use it early in the mornings. The idea would be to have programming for seniors, pickleball for seniors. During the day, there would be sort of club sports or training going on right after school. The idea, right being next to the middle school, perfectly convenient for kids and all kind of after-school activities. The demand, this is, somebody made a comment before, how is this not going to turn into another town pool? Well, the thing about right now, I don't know enough about the town pool to compare it to the town pool, but I do know about the facilities we visit around Massachusetts right now. They are oversold. You cannot find indoor space. The premiums people are paying for indoor space are off the charts. So I think the business model that we've modeled out is quite different, both in the town pool and then the usage compared to a grass field is much greater right now. So that's why we believe strongly that this is the right site for this type of facility.
And as you could hear, there are a lot of unknowns. And as I mentioned a couple of moments ago, town meeting is about all of us, neighbors in Wayland, saying, this site has been empty long enough, let's get a process started. It's a non-binding resolution that allows us and other groups to put good ideas forward. The town will then choose from that competitive process or choose none of those options. And then voters would get another say at town meeting in a year, hopefully only a year, but possibly longer, to create, to address and have final say over all the different zoning and functional approvals that would be required for this site. So we are so grateful that you have spent so much time listening to us. The idea of this is that it is a conversation. The four of us have talked amongst ourselves plenty over the last several months, so we want to hear from all of you. So if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to come down and bring the mic to you. That way, because we're on Waycam here, that way everyone at home and watches the recording can also hear your question clearly. So please,
Michael, sorry.
Oh yeah.
That was really loud.
No. That's the voice he uses when I'm in trouble.
No, just real quick before you dive into that, I just want to, again, thank everybody for coming here. Folks who support the issue, folks who don't necessarily support it and have questions, I appreciate you giving us the time to come here. I'd also like to thank Michael, you, Donnie, John, and everybody else who's on the committee. The amount of time these folks have given has been fantastic. The amount of volunteer effort, you know, these are typically the folks that are really busy because they're the ones who coach. They're the ones who are always stepping up and saying yes to things. And the amount of time that they've given me and our group over the last literally 2 years, I can't thank them enough. So thank you. There you go. Okay, now you can go back.
Thank you. So we want to hear from you. Please raise your hand. I'll come out with a microphone so we can hear your question and work through answers together. Oh, there we go. Hi. Let's see if I can do stairs under pressure here. Here we go. Hi. And if you don't mind just saying your name as well.
Oh, I will.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jean Milburn. I live at 281 Concord Road. My question has to do about long-term strategic planning for space use in this town. several years ago, we did a study looking at the inventory of land that belongs to the town. The town needs to plan for the very long term for building public buildings, schools, fire stations, all the service buildings that a town needs. We have very little land in this town in reserve for future public buildings. The report that was done is referred to as the RAP report, Wayland Real Asset Report, shows pretty clearly that we could have done some better planning in the past and held on to some more inventory, particularly large sites. Can everyone hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Particularly large sites on main roads. We have a few sites of multiple acres on some side streets and very little on the main roads with good traffic patterns. My concern is we're going to see population growth and we're going to need to expand our middle school. And that's going to happen. Our state is in the midst of a housing crisis. Our legislature is passing new laws to allow more building of houses. Here in our town, now anybody who has a single family lot can add a second housing unit to it. And this is going to drive up our school populations. And I'm all for this. I don't want our citizens being homeless and living in substandard housing. I want people to have some place to live. But it means we have to save space for expanding our schools as the state begins to rise in population and our town begins to rise. So I can't justify giving up this space to anything other than saving space for growing our educational facilities for our children. Apparently, your committee has overcome concerns regarding this, and I'd like to hear you talk about that.
Jean, thank you so much for bringing that up. One of the, if I can take the first go here, one of the beautiful parts about this plan is the idea that, yes, it is a long-term lease, but it is a lease of Wayland's land because it is a precious town resource. And it would be a long-term lease that a nonprofit would run a facility that, when built, would serve the community's needs for as long as possible. We're looking at a financially sustainable model, and we're looking to run it, again, to the town's benefit, and everybody who lives here now, everybody who's going to move into town. But at the end of the day, long-term, very long-term here, at the end of the lease, it is the town's land again. And that's a great part about keeping this type of parcel as a long-term lease with a nonprofit run. There's no for-profit angle here. It really is going to be run by Waylanders, for Waylanders, on town property that returns to the town's possession when all is said and done. So that long-term planning, if uses change in several decades, then the town has that option to do something different with it.
I'll add a few things, because this has certainly been a question high on our minds, and has been for quite a while. And the school committee will have a view. They're the experts on this and their enrollment and their long-term planning, and so we certainly defer to their say. They have some studies ongoing. All we have is some public data, which as of the 2025 report has shown that over the last 20 years, Wayland's population of school enrollment has declined, and the next 5 years are expected to decline further. I can't give you an understanding of what the dynamics are, but that's kind of what the state agencies are saying right now, and we could potentially understand how ADUs and other things factor into that, how private school matriculations occur, all that kind of stuff. The only other thing I'd say, and this is just coming from a real estate guy, is that when you look at an overlay of the middle school, and you look this parcel, which abuts that parcel is massive. And I'm not suggesting you clear cut trees and all, but there is at least another school's worth of land plus that is embedded in that parcel. Again, I'm not proposing anything, because right now, I haven't, no one's seen any need for that, and the question is, what do you do going forward? Mind you, I tell you, I lived on Orchard Lane, which is abutting one of the school properties, which when I was a kid was up for discussion to build a middle school. It turned out those thoughts of needing extra enrollment were also overblown, and that was never happened. We actually mothballed elementary schools, and that's where Loker kind of came back online a number of years ago. So there's a lot of ebb and flow, and I agree with you, it's definitely a consideration, and was in the beginning when we decided that a long-term lease was more in the interest of a town rather than give up control of a site. You have control, and the question is long-term, when do you need that? In what form do you need that? And is the current site something you can work with to do that? I think those are all questions. Again, we don't have the answers, but those were the things that we found and felt that this type of structure made sense. Again, I would defer to the school committee and their views over time.
We've got a question in the back here. If you don't mind introducing yourself.
Thank you. Todd Lyons, 10 Lodge Road. I'm a Wayland dad, and I ran Wayland Weston Youth Football and Cheer for 5 years. And so I'll start by saying that no one knows better than me how much we need space in this town for youth sports. I'll also say I'm driving my kids back and forth to Rivers right now so they can get lacrosse practice in, as we don't have enough space in town. So I think this is great. My question is this. Anyone who knows me knows that I believe immensely strongly that youth sports should be for everyone, and that the community-based sports are the sports that we need to continue to grow in this town. And they're not the youth sports that many of us grew up with. Club sports now dominate. It's a $38 billion a year industry in the United States, youth sports, and I've heard the word youth club sports mentioned multiple times in the financial model. So the busiest time that these courts are going to be needed and these things are going to be needed is in the evening, and most club sports go across towns, right? These kids pay thousands of dollars to participate. And so as the former lead of a community-based sports program, we had relatively not so deep pockets. And so how are the priorities for our Wayland youth sports going to be prioritized over these clubs that in the financial model clearly have much bigger pockets to pay for space and time in this facility?
Yeah, I'll take that one. That's a great question. So we've talked a lot about kind of the club and youth sport dynamic since the beginning of this. And myself being the former president of one of our youth sports and having others on our board that have all volunteered or ran a youth sport, like, we want to make sure that we're doing right by everybody. The goal right now, as it pertains to clubs here in Wayland and youth sports, is to dominate those hours, which is usually from 4 to roughly 9 p.m. is when you get your practices in for clubs and your nonprofit town sports, is to dominate the facility on both sides of the coin with Wayland kids. We've been talking with all the other youth sport leaders. Like right now, we have, I think, 6 Wayland-based clubs, which is awesome, and they're growing. And we can talk about clubs being the monster and coming after youth sports, which there's some truth to that historically. But if you do it a different way, where your town sports, your nonprofit like Wayland Youth Basketball, Wayland Youth Lacrosse, Wayland Youth Football, if you do it in a way where you connect the dots between your Wayland-based clubs and your town sports, it turns into an amazing thing. You no longer are driving to go to some big club, 45 minutes away, and you can have conversations and a plan to where they work together, whether it be practices, whether it be what you're teaching, what you're instilling, your systems, your offense, your defense, whatever it may be, it can all connect. We've done that with basketball, and it's been amazing. I mean, this year in Wayland Youth Basketball, we were breaking records in terms of teams that have went past the first round of playoffs, who won championships in the division. We have 3 Metro West champions this year, and a lot of that is because we have teams in our Wayland Youth Basketball League, our nonprofit town league, running the same offense, running the same stuff as we're doing on the club side. That's also based here in Wayland. And so we know that we have that going on with soccer now. And so we hear that a lot, like, these clubs are going to come and decimate it. Well, that's another reason why we want this nonprofit group controlled by Wayland citizens who have vested interest in making sure that our youth sports, both on the club side and the town side here in Wayland, are taken care of. Of course, there's a financial piece to it, right? These things have to be sustainable. But that's another benefit of it being nonprofit. Like, we're not trying to maximize the bottom line and just get as much money as we can, which was what you'll get if you go to some of these private for-profit ran facilities, right? And so we think it can be a great balance of Wayland kids on the club side, based here in Wayland, as well as our town sports here in Wayland on both sides of that kind of profit, nonprofit coin, while also giving discounts to our nonprofit Wayland Youth Sports. Hope that answers the question. Long-winded.
Hi, my name is Alexia Obar. I thankfully are out of this ring, but I did everything. It's not a sport my kids didn't do. It's not a board I didn't sit on. So I guess I have a couple questions, even sorry I was late. I am curious, when you say that there are, I assume you mean that there are club teams that are now based out of Wayland. And I just worry about the haves and the have-nots, which we can't really address. But it still gets to be the haves and the have-nots. So you're saying, oh, we'll make it fair, that the nonprofits will get time and the for-profits, club teams will get time. But how do you think that's going to happen? There's only so few hours that are the hot hours, especially in the fall. How are you going to do that? Like, is there going to be written 50-50? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we've been talking about. The whole nonprofit focus, and if you can try and envision a board governed by Wayland sports organizations, by the COA, by REC. The goal here is to carve up the day and provide adequate access. Adequate access is tough, but when you put it in a lease, like organizations have done with their towns, that's what you do. And so you carve out space. And you're right, it's not the goal here is not to involve any capital resources of the town. So that puts the onus on a variety of business models that need to pay in some form. This thing is going to be expensive, and right now is getting more expensive as the day goes on. So we have to be mindful of that. But I'd say the Ways sort of club model is one concept that is starting to happen, is that when you start to concentrate additional resources of a sport in town, prices tend to go down. And so instead of 3,000 or 4,000, it becomes 2,000 or less. And you start to build organizations that have the ability to provide subsidies for kids that need it. So I totally agree. I think system-wide, this is happening in all facets of raising kids. And so our goal here is to create a bit of window where we can manage that process and really add. Now, anytime you're dealing, I'm a soccer coach, and I don't get paid for my work, and I should get paid for my work because of how I coach my soccer. That's not true with everyone in this room, and I know who you are. Some of you deserve a paycheck, but they're professionals, and they cost money, and so that when you're adding that in, that has an impact, and that's sort of the society we live in, right? But this asset hopefully does something to address that, and those are the constructs that we're contemplating here and have from the beginning, and have plenty of models elsewhere to sort of draw from.
And I'll add to that, like, as it stands now, you have a lot of our nonprofit Wayland Town Sports paying premium price to go to these other facilities. And so when we start to model out this facility here, there's nothing that says, now we want to give discounts to our nonprofit sports, that's part of it. But I've also talked to our youth sport leaders, like, we may have to step up and do what's best for the facility, because when it's all said and done, we want it dominated with Wayland kids, not outside clubs, not outside sports, not outside groups. And so, for instance, Wayland Youth Basketball during the winter, which is our main basketball season, will not be using this facility very often. It's going to be mostly turf, because that's what the facility requires to be successful. So we can cater to our field sports. That is the kind of like team mindset that we all need to take. Now, if Wayland Youth Basketball can get one court for a couple hours and pay that premium, price, whether it's $85 per hour, $95 per hour for that one court, we will, if we can afford it, because it's the right thing to do for the success of the facility. But I think it always needs to come back to, can we dominate the space and provide a better club experience at a more affordable price for more kids? For instance, my club, I'm not cutting kids, right? Like, it's a different club environment because it's take care of our Wayland kids, not exclude them, make it some, like to your point, the has and has not, right? We don't want that. And so that is the goal. And I think we can do it, especially we'll have the time to continue to build our club kind of components here in Wayland, with Wayland kids.
The only thing I'll add is, one thing that does happen is that when space becomes more rare, the haves and the have-not gap gets larger and larger and larger. So we live in a pretty infill location. This stuff is difficult to do in all towns. And this is kind of a unique opportunity that you're not going to see much happening. You really have to go beyond the beltways into industrial zones, and that's where we end up traveling. This is going to get worse as space becomes rarer and rarer.
Hi, good evening. Jeff Horan. I'm on Center Street, which is across the street from where Liberty Pizza used to be, so right here in the neighborhood. First off, I just want to say that I really appreciate your dedication, your creativity, and your vision for the town. Your zeal is truly laudable. I'm just going to get right to brass tacks here. 195 Main Street is a non-starter for this complex. You're going to hit maximum resistance from the town, from the neighborhood. 100 mile per hour headwinds you're looking at here with this proposal here at this site. That's probably going to delay it 5 to 10 years. I wrote in my letter on February 3rd, I wasn't able to attend this meeting, Ms. Shapiro read, my proposal, this thing is totally economically viable at Wayland Town Center. It doesn't work here. It's not economically viable for Wayland residents or businesses. People that are going to go to this facility here at 195 Main Street, they're going to go to Framingham and Natick for, after parties or things like that. If it's up at the Wayland Town Center, they're going to frequent the local. They're going to go to the other restaurants and coffee shops and things like that. That's going to help Wayland businesses. This isn't going to help Wayland businesses. Also, several years ago, the town voted for outdoor playing fields at this location. So you're going to hit resistance from that for the outdoor playing fields that were voted for. I truly believe that this is probably the way this town works and how slow and inefficient things are. You'll see your thing built in 40 to 60 years at 195 Main Street after they get all the environmental issues cleaned up. It's a Superfund site over there. It's a state Superfund site that's going to take years to clean up. I think you can be up and running at the Wayland Town Center in 1 to 3 years. If you put it through the process, you have a 50-50 shot of getting it built there and open in 3 years. I just think you're just up against your tremendous headwinds and resistance at this 195 Main Street site. But I wish you well up at the town center. You'll get 100% of my support there. Thank you.
Do one of you up at the dais want to address any of those concerns?
No, appreciate the sentiment. This is a process that we've all seen with other projects and certainly understand the headwinds involved. And I think our goal is to put forth a lot of well thought out things that address a lot of concern. This project gets done if there is substantial town interest. This project gets done if it gets through all the approval processes that need to get done. This project gets done if it pencils out and works out and has a team behind it and a town behind it that generates enough enthusiasm. And I think that's really what town meeting is all about. So I would encourage everyone, if they're supportive of this, certainly show up and vote yes. If you're not supportive of it, don't show up, or show up and vote no. And that helps us understand the temperature of the town. That's really what this is about. This is not a fully baked deal that gets done at town meeting. This is a part of a process. But appreciate the comment.
One thing to quickly just add to that. We talked to the Summit Realty Partners folks ages ago. Somebody put me in touch with them. The idea of this project using town land enables us to be doing this as a nonprofit. The business model doesn't work if we have to pay private prices, union labor, charge all the costs that we have. That's private land at that facility. I've watched what they went through to try and get that parcel, the negotiation back and forth. It does not feel like the people who own the town center are that willing to lean into the town and do things from a youth sports perspective. So to the point that Alexa brings up before, we're doing this, the idea to help support youth sports. I mean, to me, the most important fabric of our community are Saturday morning soccer, our town parent coaches, and things like that. And club sports scare me a great deal because of that. If you go to a private land, something that Jeff suggested, go to the town property, the business model changes entirely. The idea here is that we can get this land that nobody's done anything with for 15 years, clearly for another, Jeff, if you follow your idea, it's going to be 40 to 50 years, which I don't know how we accept that, but okay. The opportunity here is to use this, come together as a town and say, boy, this is an opportunity to build something here that we get behind as a nonprofit and support youth sports. And that was the whole motivation behind it. So.
And not just youth sports, but healthy lifestyles for everybody here in Wayland. I'm a former board member of the Wayland Hockey Association. There's no ice in this facility. My two sons they're a senior and a sophomore in high school. They will get to enjoy this if everything is satisfactory to all of our neighbors when they come back and move into town, knock on wood, and raise their kids here. At the very least, I'm excited to keep living here, eventually retire here, and enjoy recreation department programming during the day. And I don't know how I'll look playing pickleball, but I'm pretty excited to take up the sport indoors and walk on that second floor track and get my steps in, or at least tell my wife that's what I'm doing when I'm at the Dudley Chateau. But the point being, it's for everybody here in Wayland, and so that is one of the reasons why that location can work for everybody, and all of the businesses nearby here in Cochituate as well. I'm a West Plain Street resident for the past 7 of the 10 years I've lived here, and I love walking to the area restaurants and coffee shops and different businesses that are in the village of Cochituate and supporting them. We had a question up front here.
For sure. Hi, Bianca, 81 Hillside. I am a Wayland mom, a taxpayer, an avid sports fan, part-time Uber driver, it feels like, with all the games and everywhere we go. And I can't help, I'm newer to Wayland, so I didn't grow up here last 5 years or so. But I can't help think that if nothing changes, nothing changes. And it has to start somewhere. And so I'm eternally grateful for all the people in this room asking the questions, having the conversations, volunteering to pour into our generation. And even if my kids don't see it, I still want to see it happen. Recently I was in Florida and I saw everything that this could be. My kids were putting around on a rock climbing wall. I was doing laps. There were older people that were, in a book nook reading. It was an amazing facility, and it just brought me so much joy to see, like, you can have mixed use, multi-purpose, like something there's something for everyone if you're willing to just take that chance. So my question is, with this proposal, is there anything else outside of saving it for the future, potentially, redirecting traffic? Has anyone shown any interest in the property that would help rectify the issues that are there now? Like, is there quote unquote competition for the space?
You know, I think once a town decides that it wants to do something, and obviously environmental issues are remediated, my sense of the issue is that it's not an insurmountable project, cleaning up that site. It needs to be done regardless of this. And so with issues like that cleared up, with senses from consultants that this stuff can work. I mean, we have a pool next to a high school. It works. It's not ideal. There involves congestion, but it has existed and coexisted for a long time. So we have an example in our town, and we can improve upon that. So if a town wants it, I think this competitive process will involve a lot of parties. Again, this space is rare, and you know, when there's an opportunity, there will be, and that process is healthy for this process and for Wayland. You want the best partner and facility to be built. We're simply one, and we are talking to other groups that would partner with us. So we're certainly bringing that that competitive set to bear on this discussion. But yes, I would expect that to be a robust process.
Thank you. Pablo, I live in Barrington Road. I am or have been involved now in town sports and club sports as well, both myself and my kids. I think it makes total sense what you're saying about the model of town sports, club sports. I am really concerned why someone would consider that this is not actually a good idea. I grew up in Europe. In Europe, every single town, every single neighborhood has one of these. And it's not a new concept. It's a concept that has been there for decades. So I only see the positive of this. Two questions though. Can you talk a little bit more about the timeline of this? So I understand now town meeting, potentially 2026, some decisions. Then what's kind of the timeline for the construction? Where could we start actually using this approach? What are the scenarios for that, first thing? And second thing, can you talk a little bit more about the business model besides the town sports and the club sports? Are you also envisioning like individual membership fees, summer camps, winter camps? There's a lot of options actually on top of what you mentioned.
Sure. I'll talk about the second one. If someone wants to talk about the first one. The programming here is multifaceted. So we would look to find use for every hour. That's really the intent of the facility. And so in summers, you're exactly right. Having local summer options that really work in conjunction with either gaps that exist now. We've certainly talked about, we really haven't talked about the synergies that exist with the middle school population. And we've certainly sort of talked about after school gaps in coverage. And so over time, this is an asset that sort of facilitates new options, shortfalls in services, and summer it's certainly more of the same. I think going to a 75-degree facility versus a 95-degree grass field outside is something people will pay for. There are plenty of ongoing athletic events that could be housed here, but certainly camps, I think, are a big opportunity, whatever that form looks like. We have all this space. There's a variety of things that can be done, but certainly summer programming, off-season programming. And again, you can see we're catering to however many hands worth of options of things, batting cages that can come down from the ceiling. We're really looking at appealing to sports. There's a lot of technology in spaces like this that didn't exist. You have tiles that flip, you have curtains, you have things that carve up spaces very effectively. I went to Winchester Community Park yesterday and saw how they took an 11v11 field and carved it into 6 zones for 6 different teams. And they had plenty of space and small apparatus that they worked on various technical skills and things. There's well thought out thinking that takes small spaces like this and really maximizes the use.
Thank you, John. A good question. So as far as the timeline we're looking at right now, we're going to have the article in coming up in a couple weeks, April 7th or 8th. The idea is if we get enough support there, go back to the select board, have them issue an RFP, follow the entire public procurement process. We know we're gonna end up having to come back to town meeting in 2026. So best case scenario, we wouldn't be able to start construction probably till late 2026, 2027, I think is what we were talking about before. You know, there's a bunch of work that has to be done after this town meeting, before the next town meeting. Everything from different zoning article, we have to have a separate zoning article. There's gonna be conservation committee. There's a lot of work to be done leading up to 2026. There's gonna be fundraising that has to be done. So best case scenario, 2027, I think is what we talked about before, the idea of some sort of breaking ground at that point. It's just a box that we're building. I don't think construction's gonna take that long. But again, I'm not in construction. But from what we've been told by folks, it really is not that complex once we get the approval to move forward with it.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is town meeting is once a year. We're certainly not expecting special town meetings in fall and other opportunities to vet before the town. So we have to work within that time frame. And so everything is staged. Once you have the approval to enter into a lease at the next town meeting, you have to go through your approval processes. And that involves all committees. And we've talked to a good chunk of them to understand what their issues are, what their timeframes are, but we wouldn't be special to any other timeline that any other project like this would be.
Any other questions? Gene, the repeat customer. Here we go.
Jean Milberg, 281 Concord Road. I'm going to ask you a business school question. I used to be a business school team years ago. When you plan a project, you have to know what the failure plan is. You hope you're going to have, when you plan a project, you have to have a failure plan that you put out for all the investors and all the players in the relationship to see. So we have a piece of town land, we have a beautiful new building, people do not turn out to support you, your financials don't work, the organization's a failure, so here's a town, we've got our land, we've got somebody else's building on it, what's the get out of town plan?
Just so I understand the question, I mean, if the town doesn't want it, then we'll know pretty soon and we won't have a project, right? So that's the first milestone. If you get through an enthusiastic town that really wants it, you have a number of milestones that you need to hit in order to work. Certainly the approval process is not a small one. I wouldn't say it's as Herculean as Jeff, but it needs to be well thought out, and your partnership needs to be really strong to get through that process. So another set of hurdles that, again, not guarantee, but ensure a better product and a site that something good can happen on. As part of construction, we're not going to be able to swing a hammer. We're not going to be able to get $1 of funding until we have adequate capital behind us. And so if we decide to go get debt, for instance, they're not going to be able to fund $1 until we have all the equity that it takes to fund the project. So inherent in a building process, there are plenty of milestones that will serve as gating. Within the lease, the town of Wayland will have a number of outs. And if we don't hit those milestones, whether that's building milestones at certain stages, then the town can null and void the lease. And we've sort of defaulted on our right to maintain that. So I think at a number of different stages, you're not really looking at a half-built structure that gets abandoned. Mind you, as a real estate guy, if I had a half-built structure in my town, I would be the next one up looking to buy that at a discount in order to do what everyone else wanted to do. to build something like that at a discount is a very exciting thing. So maybe you're right. Maybe something horrible happens and CSC doesn't happen, but there are going to be a number of folks looking to come work with the town and pick up where we left off. But again, I've sort of laid out a system that creates hurdles for a reason, and you have to get over it to really start doing something on that side. Does that help?
Thank you, that's good for now.
See you again, go back. Oh, sorry. I'll come over after.
Easier right here. Hey, I'm Matt Connors. I live over on 286 Old Connecticut Path. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, so this is very appealing to me. For the folks in the room who are in support of this, what can we do to help you guys beyond just like dragging as many people as we can to the town meeting, right? Is there information we can share? Do you have flyers? And street team, how can we help you guys out?
One thing I didn't mention. There is a pad of paper going around somewhere, so thank you, Matt. If you want to sign up, put your email on there. And you're right, the first step is town meeting, April 7th or the 8th. Come out, show up, bring as many people there as you can. Again, this is a non-binding resolution. We're not asking anybody for any money right now. We want to just get support of the town, have people show up and say they're interested in doing something with this site. Beyond that, there's a bunch of things we need to do. We've got a great group of volunteers now. We can always use more. We need to get people involved, and motivated to do different things, show up. We've got a great group now, and we'd love to have you on board.
And if anybody who was not able to make it tonight and doesn't want to sit through thank you, Waycamp, for being here, but who doesn't want to watch the entire hour, 15, hour and a half recording, on waylandcsc.org, we have a frequently asked questions page, which does address a lot of the questions that we've heard tonight with some well thought out answers, because we want this to be something that folks can understand, give feedback on, keep asking questions. There's a comment form on the website. So one of the great things that volunteers can do is come out to town meeting. Yes, bring as many friends as you can, and then keep directing folks to the latest, most accurate information that we can muster up about what we think is a pretty good idea. And we had another question in the back. Hello again.
Just a follow-up to what you were just discussing about the lease and if there's failures. We do have another facility in town that similar nonprofit taking a town resource, and it was awesome, the pool. I think that it was hugely successful in a lot of ways, but then not successful. My children were literally probably some of the first kids to jump in that pool, and they were from 5 to 18. So I love that, but it did have some issues. So in that lease, would you include things like some kind of penalties if you fail to pay your bills, that you would not take taxpayer money as a bailout when things got difficult? Are those things that you're thinking about and learning from what happened in that situation?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. How can you not? And I learned to swim in that pool. Again, I can't really opine to the pool situation. It's a swimming pool, and it's a very different beast than what we're talking about. We will have a brand new facility, and the intent is to have a reserve fund that in years forward, where things start to fail their normal useful lives, that fund exists in order to accommodate those things. That's usually how facilities like that work. Certainly I hear you, and the goal for us has been from the beginning, whether on the construction or at any point in its life, to not need the town, and in fact to be financially stable to provide the town and to have a payment. This is how other towns have structured their public-private partnerships, and we would certainly look to build off those structures that have worked for the Wellesleys and other peer towns that go through this process.
Any other questions in the room? Scott?
Well, if there are no more questions, I was gonna call up Karen. I don't wanna put you on the spot, Karen. Karen Kelly, who and the EDC have been working on childcare for the town meeting. This is something I like. Wayland Dad has run childcare in the past. I think it's great. We all know if we have young kids how difficult at times town meeting can be. So I appreciate the EDC, Katie and Karen pulling together to do childcare.
Well, we are not doing the childcare. The childcare is going to be provided by students against drunk driving, which is great, sad at the high school. So we're just trying to help promote it. And this has been unbelievable, guys, and thanks so much for doing this. I know what it's like to pour your heart into something for this community to try and make it better, so thank you for all you're doing, and everybody here. I serve on the Economic Development Committee, as well as Katie Harris, and thanks for giving us a minute here to just chat. We have an article, Article 20, for town meeting, probably heard about it. I've lived here for 10 years, and a lot of times people say in Wayland, why can't we have nice things? Why can't we have the restaurants we want? Why can't we have the sports facilities we want? And this is your chance to get the nice things. So our articles would allow for pre-order pickup windows for fast casual restaurants within a certain set of Route 20. It's really in response to the 1,500 responses we got. I think probably 80% or 90% of you in the room filled out our survey. And we're excited about it. We hope you can vote. It's going to be Monday night. We're going to have childcare. We hope to see you there to get all these things passed so we can have nice things.
Closing thought, oh, we have another question here. No apologies, this is why we're here.
This is more about the child care question piece, and I know that there are some members of the select board here. Like, how late is this going? I guess is the question for Monday night. Like, you know, I have an elementary age child, he can stay up till 9, 10 o'clock at night, but if it's going till 11 o'clock, I think I saw that there was a list of babysitters and stuff, but yeah, are we thinking it's gonna be 11 o'clock at night? Like, okay. Okay. It's just, I think all parents know this, that town meeting is town meeting. It's just frustrating that it may go to a second night. That's 2 nights of a sitter potentially, depending on the timing. So it just makes it harder for parents to come out and vote for these things. So this is my soapbox. But thank you, that is helpful.
And we empathize with that. Most of us, if not all of us, who have gathered and volunteered over recent months to support this project, we're parents. Most of our kids, not most actually, a good amount of our kids are a little bit older now and can stay home alone, but there were certainly articles in years past that we would have wanted to be very supportive of, that we, because of childcare, were not able to go and actually cast the vote, and those things didn't come to be in the town that we love, in the town that we live in the town we pay taxes to, in the town that we invest our money and, more importantly, our lives in. And so we hear you there. And there is no guilt or shame for being a parent who can't make it to town meeting. What we would say is, and we will say is, anybody who can get over that hurdle or team up together. Maybe just what we've seen in the past is families come together and, okay, we lose one vote because they're taking care of 5 families' kids, and that parent is having a rough night. but then that's, how many families did I say? 5? Okay, so then that's potentially as many as 9 other parents who can go and vote. And so we understand, as creative as we can be and as supportive as we can be of each other, that's how we get to move these things forward for all generations. Hi.
Hi. Perfect. I'll just add, we have some flyers about the childcare. You can sign up. Night 1, it will go late. Our vote for Article 20, if you're coming to vote for that, will probably happen between 8 and 9 p.m. If you have a little kid, like, you know, under the age of 8, you're probably going to want to get a sitter at home. However, Wayland sitters, if you go on the Facebook page, there's a lot of them lining up to babysit at home. And your suggestion is great. If you can get a bunch of kids at one location, that's awesome. But if they can come, then we also have high schoolers here. Suggested donation. Night 2 is going to be a lot shorter. So probably easier to handle from a timing perspective, but we are pooling resources, so please reach out to us also if you have questions, or just go on the Wayland Sitter page. We all have young kids and we're trying to figure it out, so we're right there with you.
Any other questions tonight? And again, if you think of it later, waylandcsc.org, we have a comment page, we have contact information. Please do reach out. The big takeaway, and I'll let Scott close here because he is our fearless leader and has done so much to get us to this very important point. And we are deeply, deeply indebted to you for this. We're deeply indebted to you for everything you've done for this town over the 14 years that you have just epitomized the best of Wayland, Scott Walters. To summarize here.
He's a PR guy.
No, I want something. I'm just saying, yeah, I'm a sycophant. So, town meeting, April 7th into April 8th. This will be the last item on the agenda, correct? Non-binding resolution is statutorily the last item on the agenda. So, turnout matters as much as we can. It's a non-binding resolution. It's a chance to keep exploring. We're one project that would love to participate in the public procurement process. Others will as well. And the select board should choose the project that fits the needs of this town best. We hope it's us. We think it'll be us if we're given a fair shot. But if it's not, we're your neighbors. We want to see what's best for this town. So let's give us, as a town, a shot at building something. Let's say yes to something, and something great. Scott?
I can't say it any better than that. Thank you everybody for showing up tonight. Really genuinely appreciate it. It's a weeknight, it's a school night. Everybody's got a lot of things to do. You gave about 2 hours of your time tonight. So thank you everybody. Michael, John, everybody else in the committee, thank you. And have a nice evening.
And whoever has that pad of paper, can you hold it up so we can collect that? Oh, to leave, thank you. Thank you everybody.